All right, listeners. So excited to have with us today. We have Sona Khosla, and Sona is an amazing resource. She works at Benevity and as the Chief Impact Officer. And she's going to share with us some new data, some new research that came out, and what the future holds for this important work. Welcome, Sona.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie.
Well, tell us about I always love starting with kind of everyone's personal story, what brought you into this work and what you're seeing nowadays.
Yeah, I guess I'd describe my story of getting into this work as a bit of a series of accidents. Um, Maybe that's how most lives unfold. But, I was back in university, I became obsessed with reading the stories of some of, the great, global change makers like Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi and Maya Angelou, and was just so inspired by their work. But it really didn't shape my career until about 10 years ago when I joined Benevity because I did a communications degree, got into kind of, PR comms, marketing, brand. And your career just kind of takes over and you kind of follow the current of your career and you just keep going from role to role to role. And I mean, I found myself in a number of mission-driven companies, but I ended up getting laid off at a company that I loved and then discovered this company, Benevity, and learned what they did. And I didn't know that corporate social responsibility was a thing. I thought CSR was like customer service representative. That's how naive I was at the time. And I heard about this company that built a tech platform that helped other companies do good in the world through, enabling grant making and scholarships and sponsorships, but also engaging their employees and doing good through giving donations, matching, volunteering, taking positive social environmental action. I was like, this is something I want to be a part of. And what I found there was that I discovered what I describe as the best people at the best companies doing the best work. And really making capitalism the great thing that we all want it to be, and directing resources from companies to make the world a better place. And so I just kind of felt like I found my people. And I've realized that actually it's almost like coming full circle back to those books that I read, people who are in this work to really serve and to bring about the justice that we all have a right to bring about the rights of people, and enabling them to live their lives to their fullest potential. And so, yeah, I just fundamentally believe that this work is actually metaphysical to some extent, Julie. It's not just that, people deserve things, it's that we're also all connected, and
Mhm.
that what we do to others, we do to ourselves. And, it's just this is a common belief in Eastern religions. I come from a Hindu background, but also indigenous ways of knowing, like we're just all connected. And so it's just the right thing to do is to take care of each other. And so in this moment, I definitely feel like this work is under significant pressure. I mean, I've been in this space for 10 years now, and I've seen it through a number of different cycles, um, through the pandemic, through economic volatility, through mass layoffs, through the social and racial justice movement of 2020, and like, but this, what we're in now, feels like the worst, to be honest.
I agree. I agree. 10 years too, and I've never seen it like this. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be in complete denial about it and be naively optimistic. Like, no, no, noise, noise, put my headphones on, just keep doing the work. And I think, Sona, thanks for that summary, what brought you into the work. And even in this critical moment, right, our voices can't be silenced, and that's something they can't take away from us. And it's really powerful to share the, optimistic side or the real side, or in your case, data, numbers, whatever it takes to show we're not going away. You can't stifle this work. I mean, you can really make it difficult, which we're seeing. But it's not going to go away. There's just too many people that care about it, like you.
Yeah, and it's just how it is the nature of progress. We will progress. We'll take steps back, but we will progress. I fundamentally believe that resistance is a part of progress, and so that's what we're facing. And um, I can't not do this work right now, right? And so, as exhausting as it can be, people like us, Julie, are just called to it. This is what it's all for. And if not now, when, right?
Mhm. Yeah, like what else do you want me to do? I don't know
Yeah.
how to do anything else well. I mean, I could, but I don't think anyone would want me to do anything else.
And Julie, we're not the only ones. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've been talking to people. I mean, you talk to people every week and you see people in this space. I think if I can bring some scale to that discussion, like I can share some of the data that we've been seeing
Please.
at Benevity. And so at Benevity, we have a little spin-off, a social innovation lab called Benevity Impact Labs. And there we just study research and data around what's happening in the impact and inclusion space so that we can help, primarily companies activate on it more effectively. We see as companies as great catalysts in the world for driving positive social and environmental change. And we've been looking at the data around how companies are in this environment, and you might be surprised to hear that 76% of CSR, corporate social responsibility leaders, are saying that they're going to increase their investments and in the next year. And so that is, I think they're putting their money and their investments on this work. And when you drill down a little deeper and you ask, okay, why? You know, of course, there's a moral imperative that many of us are driven to, but there's actually a business imperative. When we look at the top reasons that they're doing this work, it's ROI for the business. They know it drives value. They know their consumers expect it of them, and their talent, their employees expect it of them. And so they're doing this, for business reasons, recognizing that there is a great social benefit as well, and balancing kind of the profit and purpose mandate of companies today.
Yeah, yeah. That is so interesting, increasing the investment at a time when we're hearing quite the opposite narrative in the news cycle, and maybe even rumblings of in hallway conversations, like you said, conversations I'm having with folks. Because we're led to believe that this works on pause or, it's under legal review. I've heard all sorts of things, Sona. So I'm curious. The one thing I've seen in the data, and even 2024 data is kind of useless at this point. It has to be like 2025, and we're so early into the year still
I know.
that we don't have as much data. So that's why I really love your report, is companies are doing the work, but they're a lot quieter about doing the work. What are you hearing in that regard?
Yeah, we're definitely hearing that trend as well. So when we look at where they're investing, you might be surprised here, but the top area is employee resource groups,
Hmm. Yep.
followed by employee volunteerism, and then followed by developing ethical practices around AI. Um, so they are what we're hearing when I get on the phone with our corporate clients and talk to these leaders, they're saying, we're just figuring out how to continue the good work.
Mhm.
All we want to do is continue the good work. We don't want to target on our backs. So we're monitoring exactly how much, we want to be that poppy standing up in the field right now.
Yeah.
But there's a number of companies that I've also spoken to have said, this is in our DNA. Like, it's not going anywhere. Like, we have committed to this over the long term. We have been employee driven. We've been empowered. And so we're not going anywhere. And it's been interesting, Julie, because I've been watching the news, and Benevity has a number of Fortune 1000 companies in our client base. Of course, I can't talk about who all of them and who they are, but when I see some of their names show up in the media, and some of them are, under the label of they're doing rollbacks, and I know the work they're doing, and I'm like, that I wouldn't consider what they're doing a rollback. What I would
Exactly.
so
Yes.
interesting. It's like, no, they're actually, yes, they're being a little more quiet about it, but they're actually investing in their people right now, way more, thinking about how to support their employee resource groups, their communities,
Yep.
that, of underrepresented people. And even when they say that, it's seen as stepping back. And I think we have this challenge in our space where, if you're not talking about it, you're seen as not doing it. And I think those two things are very different.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, there's some household names our listeners would recognize that we could both talk about that are doing the work and not being boastful about it. Like to your point about being the tall puppy poppy, you call the tall poppy flower. What did you say
Yeah,
now?
the poppy in the field.
Yeah, poppy in the field. I wanted to make sure I got it right because it's good. I've been using the analogy to your point about embedding it into your culture, like it's in our DNA. The analogy that I got, and this is mostly from my students because I teach a university class, they said, I don't think they understand. Like, this is who we are. You can't legislate inclusion out of us. So the metaphor that came to me is like a cake that's already been baked. Like you're not taking the sugar or the flour out of it. It's like in there. It's baked in there.
Well, that's the thing. And I mean, we often talk to our clients and they know it. They're like, we look at our talent. If we don't do this work, we're going to face employee activism. Like we're going to face a demand that, we live our values and their values. Like it's just, and I think but just back in September, right, we hit the tipping point of where there's more millennials and Gen Z in the workforce than there is any other generation. It's like they've grown up with this. It's who they are. It's exactly right. And they're the ones who define the market. Ultimately, I think shareholders react to them because they're the buyers, they're the decision makers. So,
Agree.
even with all this shareholder activism, I'm like, you're not like it's not making a ton of sense in terms of if your job is to actually protect the business, then you would really look at investing in these areas because that's where the market's going. Like the purchasing power by 2035 that Gen Z is going to hold, like
Mhm.
their values aren't going to change. They're not going to stop caring about the environment or stop caring about human rights. Like, so,
Yeah.
not after
It's
what they've
our,
been
yeah.
through.
It's only going to strengthen, right? Especially with these unnecessary pressures that are being put on it.
That's the
Yeah,
opportunity for business, I think.
well, it's a great business application that you just shared too. Like shareholders are reacting to younger consumers. Keyword there, reacting, right? And inclusion, I've always tried to frame it as like insurance. It's being proactive. If you're not working on inclusion, whether that's your employee resource groups, other cultural initiatives, or just like you said, baking it, into the cake, it's your the risks far outweigh like of not doing it, of doing the work. I mean, lawsuits, discrimination claims, turnover. I mean, you and I could go on, but there is this like knee-jerk reaction, this instant kind of withdrawal. Okay, we're not supposed to be doing this. Oh gosh, we could get attacked by this new administration. And I get it. I get it for business leaders. It feels risky. But, we're really asking for courage over cowardice right now, I think, from leaders. And so I'm just curious, a lot of leaders that are learning into that courage, even if they're doing it quietly, that's great. Just do the work. I don't need you to talk about it, right? Just do it. But what do you think it takes at this moment in time for leaders to really engage in a time when they might feel quite conflicted?
Yeah, I think it's such a good question, Julie, because I think we're living in like a soup, right? We're all in this psychic soup, and there is so much fear in this soup that I think what it's taking right now is for people to say, okay, I acknowledge that there is risk, like significant risk in the system right now. But what is it? What is the risk of inaction? Um,
Exactly.
which is what you
Mhm.
pointed out. What's the risk of inaction? And what do I know for sure that will be enduring? I think that is the most important thing. Like in these moments, like when I look back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and you look at these movements, they've gone back and forth. The pendulum has swung, but staying steadfast, got marriage equality rights, women's rights, right? Like, all of the equity that we see now. So I think thinking about what is enduring, the thing I think about as a leader in this space every day is in 10 years, I want to feel like I can still proudly say that here's what I did. I want to be proud of what I did. And so I'm thinking long term. That's one of the most enduring. The other thing is what we've learned in our data is that while the majority of business leaders who do this work say they're doing it for business value, it is shocking the number of business leaders that don't actually have measurement or metrics.
I know. I
And
know.
that I think is an Achilles heel in this space. And so that's partly why the data is so important. So, it's almost half don't have measurement or metrics. So that's partly why we're trying to advocate with data and say, okay, like we released a study, you referenced retention. We released a study back in 2022 that showed that newer employees who engage in giving and volunteering through their companies are 52% less likely to leave. We have data right now that shows that your Glassdoor ratings will actually be higher if you have higher participation rates in these programs because it has a halo effect on your purpose, your values, how you perceive your CEO, because they're advocating for these programs. So that kind of data is really critical because I think if you show up emotionally and morally, you're actually likely to alienate business leaders, especially in the
Mhm.
risk, legal, and financial, areas
When it
who
gets
are
into like quote unquote listeners identity politics or somehow it's like us versus them. I mean those are tricky waters. Like just stick to the
yeah,
basics like you said. Like what are the measurements, the impacts to the business? And Sona, I love what you said too because I literally have a writing on my wall that I went through some therapy to kind of craft language around this and it's very important right now for mental health is literally what you said about the long term. It's about legacy. This is legacy work. And what kind of legacy do you want to leave leaders, right? Like what is your leadership legacy? And these are the nuts and bolts of that. When people are in their final times on the planet, they don't say they wish they'd worked more or made more money. No, that's just so rare that someone would say that. Maybe there are some people that I won't even mention who those people might be. But most people like, gosh, I wish I'd had more of an impact. I wish I'd, deepened my relationships. I wish I'd spent more time with other human beings that were important to me. And that's what this work is really about.
it really is. And the people who gravitate to this space are doing it for that. And so it's incumbent upon us to bring everybody else in the business along with us and to tap into the individual motivations of those folks. Like, you can run these programs and mitigate risk. It's not a binary. You can stand for something, but be inclusive. Like it's not a binary. And I think that's the other piece is, I think, you reference kind of the us and them thing. It's like, it can't, it can't be that. And in fact, this work isn't that. It isn't about, um, saying one is better than the other. It's really around breaking down those binaries and saying, actually, we've got a lot more in common than we don't. And that everyone deserves a chance, no matter what their background experiences and abilities are.
Mhm.
And paving the way for that. It was really interesting. A few years ago, we released a study that was all about kind of the state of workplace DEI. And it said, over 90% of employees said that they had benefited from a DEI program.
I reference that statistic all the time. It's
It's like,
so
okay,
powerful.
yeah,
90%. I mean, where else in your business do you get that?
where else do you get that? And like that goes to show diversity programs are not for just the minority of populations, that actually when you design your systems for all, like you benefit all and
Right.
more people than you'd ever expect. Sometimes by solving a problem over here, you solve a problem for all these other people over here. And that's what I think is so powerful about this work is when you start to think about my experience is not the only experience. But for example, I don't have children, but I have older parents. So as
Mhm.
caregivers, we have similar things. So if we can solve for both, we're actually hitting a majority of our employee population. And
Yeah.
so I think that stat just never ceases to amaze me because it just goes to show that we all benefit from these programs.
Yeah. Yep. The good old analogy, rising tide lifts all boats. And there's so much evidence of that when I think about things that benefit disabilities. We wouldn't have text messaging, right? Like closed captions, like all of these things. It's not a binary. It's really for all of us. It's true inclusion benefits everyone.
Yeah, I can't tell. I only watch closed captions now. Like when I'm out in public, all my videos are on
Yeah.
mute and I'm watching the closed, like it's so
Yeah.
great.
Same, same. I've gotten into British television recently because of their accents. I can really benefit from the closed captions, and that just doesn't benefit one group. It benefits so many other groups. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that's the heart of inclusion. Well, I know y'all are on the forefront of research in this space. Are there new projects you're working on, things that you're excited about now?
Yeah, I mean, we have our newest report coming out in May. So, State of Corporate Purpose 2025 is coming out. And I can tell you there's some very interesting trends in there, Julie. We might have to have another conversation about that. Um,
Hmm.
but, one thing I will say is a lot of the data is showing us that um, we track data on courage and caution within companies. And
Ooh.
we've been tracking, so this will be the third year, I think, that we've tracked it. And I'll just say, like, we are seeing such a strong appetite for courage, and yet we're so cautious in our approaches right now. And I think there's an opportunity for us to bridge that. And I think it's going to require non-binary thinking, kind of what we call at Benevity, the power of and. How can you do this and do this? And really creative thinking. And I think people in our space proved that in the pandemic and the racial justice movement of 2020, we can be creative, we can be agile, we can be adaptable. And so I'm quite encouraged by how much people want to see courage. What I'd say is it's up to us to bring the solutions to the table around how we can execute it. I think companies are being slow right now to react, and I understand why. There's a lot at stake. Um, but I would encourage people to take small steps and experiment. You don't have to make big moves right now, like even testing how you post things on social media or how you communicate internally, what's resonating, tapping your ERGs, finding out how they're feeling. What are the small things you can do to make sure that they know that they still belong, that they're cared for, and that they're a benefit to the company, and to keep contributing their unique experiences. So there's so
Yep.
many small actions we can all take in our day to day to continue this work.
Yeah. Yeah. I can speak to that personally. Participated in a lot of facilitating, listening sessions nowadays and getting a pulse of employees. And the number one thing I'm taking away from these conversations is that they want companies to say, not externally, more importantly, internally. That's what employees care about. They want to hear the commitment.
Yeah.
Hey, we're still committed. All you have to say is we're still committed to inclusion. Even if you're
Yeah.
working, the attorneys are reviewing it, which we have a whole nother podcast on the legalities and the falsehoods around that. Even if you are hitting pause right now, echoing your commitment to the work long term and figuring out what it looks like long term is totally fair. Every business strategy gets updated and rebranded, pivots, of course. This is no different. But not saying something, not and just hitting pause and not saying anything is very dangerous. And I expect organizations will be held accountable for that. And you may not feel it today, you may not feel it tomorrow, but you and I know the long game, you're out.
Amen, sister.
Well, we'll have to feature the next report. This is so fun, and listeners, I'll link to the most current report on some of those fascinating findings. And if nothing else, even if your organization isn't talking actively about these things, or even if you don't have employee resource groups, download a copy of the report, have a lunch and learn, a conversation with your team if you're a manager. Hey, what do you think was interesting? That is, of course, legal. Of course, it should not be controversial at all. This is data. This data
Yeah.
is important to our business. Let's just talk about it.
Exactly, because this is dinner table talk right now. So, how rare is it that these topics are at every single dinner table right now? And so, of course, it's on people's minds. So, I think acknowledging that reality and engaging
Mhm.
in the conversation in a way that's just providing people with a platform to share their views and their experiences could be deeply unifying, which may be exactly what we need right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's humanizing, getting to know people as human beings, not just at your dinner table. You can bring it to the lunch table too. Thanks, Sona, for your great work. I'm telling listeners, where can they follow Benevity's latest research and get the scoop?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually post data weekly on my LinkedIn, so people can follow me on LinkedIn, Sona Khosla. Um, and Benevity.com/impact labs. You can find all of our research there. Hopefully, it's a great resource for leaders in this work to be able to find the data to advocate and evangelize for this work. As well, we just recently launched a resource hub. That's benevity.com/ I believe it's lead with purpose. I'll give you the link for the show notes, Julie.
Yeah.
And we're going to be updating it consistently to just support, leaders, managers, individuals who are in this work through this moment, so that we can all come out the other side and feel proud of the legacy we've left.
Yeah. Oh, I love all that. So good. Well, keep up the amazing work. Stay strong, and thanks for your voice in the world, Sana.
Right back at you, Julie. Thank you.